All right, guys, welcome in. It's Monday morning. It's time for full court press. Robino, I saw you last prior to going to Allen Fieldhouse, and it's like that's there's life before you go there, and then there's life after you go there. So I'm a changed person since we last spoke on Saturday. I got to go to the Kansas BYU game. Not the outcome that I was hoping for as someone with BYU plus 4.5, though they almost got there at the very end. But what a tremendous experience that was. A much better day for me yesterday. I swept yesterday 3-0. So all in all, a good weekend. There's no way your weekend could have been as good as mine because you did not go to Allen Fieldhouse. But how was your weekend aside from that?
Yeah, wait a minute. How about Chaffetz? Because St. Louis was rocking on Friday night. They destroyed that team.
Yeah. Tulsa. Listen, Tulsa was great yesterday. I got both had tremendous crowds. Both those are two teams, and I'll say this to if you can get to a St. Louis game or a Tulsa game in the next month, you should absolutely try to do so. Like if you're in the Midwest somewhere and it's a couple-hour drive, do yourself a favor, go watch that St. Louis team play in person. Go watch Tulsa play in person. Two tremendous offensive teams, and both like I was so impressed with the game, like production from Tulsa yesterday. Just like that was like the sort of pleasant surprise of the weekend for me in terms of like all the places I went. I knew Allen Fieldhouse was going to be insane, and it was. The crowd at St. Louis on Friday night was awesome. We knew that was sold out. What I was not expecting was like 6,000 or 7,000 people to show up at the Tulsa game, and all of the different stuff they had, just like production wise for that game, the light show, like it was awesome. So yeah, those are two teams though that I mean, if you can get to one of those games this year, I think both Rob, could potentially make some noise in March. So yeah, it was a good weekend.
Yeah, certainly. Let's go back to how the weekend went. You had a 3-0 yesterday. I had a 2-1. So for anybody who was on board, we'll start early here. The double the CBB firepower package. You got 5-1 yesterday. On Saturday, Adam, I believe I was 5-3 in college hoop on Saturday. Real heartbreaker on Saturday where I would have had all 5 top play winners. I had USC over 78.5. And what happened the last 5 minutes of that game is a 16-point lead, and you have 74 points with about 5 to go, and you can't score 5 points the rest of the way, even though Rutgers closed the gap and you can get to the free throw line. But it was crazy. USC just never really had any chances. I don't know how to explain it. But that aside, we had a good weekend. Friday night, obviously, 2-0. Had the St. Louis team total over. I forget what we left here for the parlay. Oh, it was Sacred Heart. Sacred Heart dropped another 90+ on Quinnipiac that night. So great weekend overall. If I calculate that in my head real quick, that's 4-1, 5-3. That's 9-4 over the weekend college hoops. So again, weekend package, 3-day package, double the CBB firepower, $59 for 3 days. And Adam, like you said, off to a huge start in February.
Yeah, it was a good weekend. We have people have now filed in. I was trying to just kind of chat it up for a couple minutes because it looked like the stream wasn't going, but the stream is up. The count of people here has increased. So I think it's time to get into it, Rob. Not a huge slate tonight, but we have one game that absolutely deserves the attention. Should probably be the game that's on your main screen come 9 p.m. Eastern time tonight. The Kansas Jayhawks, very impressive over the weekend. I have to be honest. I was not expecting them to just sort of bully BYU the way they did in that game. The final score was a little bit misleading. I was sitting there with a chance to cover 4.5 somehow at the end of that game. But Kansas ended up getting it done. They deserved to win. They deserved to probably win by double digits. The big takeaway from the second half of that game, Rob, is no Peterson in the second half, right? And, he leaves with cramps. I thought it made sense because they were up. I mean, they were up 20, more than 20 at one point, I believe, if I remember correctly. I know it was right around 20, maybe 18 at half. I think in the second half at multiple points, it got 220 and maybe even over a 20-point margin. So when you've had a guy dealing with injury, Rob, and you've got a guy that's cramping, absolutely no reason to put him out there. Maybe it's why BYU came back a little bit, though I have a theory that that's a little bit different than that. So talk to me about this game. Now Kansas hits the road. They go to Lubbock. Texas Tech had an interesting loss over the weekend, one I certainly wasn't expecting. So how do you see this Kansas on the road tonight in Lubbock, Texas?
Yeah, let's start with Kansas, Adam. It's a team that's red hot inside the Big 12 right now. 5 consecutive covers. It started with Iowa State in that blowout game, 84-63. It's bracketed by what happened Saturday that you witnessed, the 90-82 win against BYU, which wasn't really as close as the final score would indicate, like you mentioned, and they did a lot of it without Darren Peters in the second half. I think he sat the final 16 minutes or so. But, Melvin Council Jr., talked about him earlier this year. What a pickup from St. Bonnie Melvin Council Jr. has been. And the starting group for Kansas put in a ton of minutes, put in a lot of work, got the job done against BYU. If I get to Texas Tech on Saturday, Adam, I maybe it's going to sound like I'm justifying this, but I'm just going to call it a Houston hangover. Some of the numbers that came out of that game on Saturday for Texas Tech: lose by 8, give up 88 to UCF, which is a high-scoring team, but 88's a lot to give up. Get beat on the free throw line, minus 10 in free throw attempts, minus 11 in free throw makes, so you lose 11 points right there at the foul line. But Texas Tech, which contested Houston so well on the glass twice in 2 meetings this year, could only pull away 4 offensive rebounds, while the other side got 13. Central Florida, lots of second chances. Texas Tech just almost like they were gassed, had 13 turnovers, only forced 6. Not that they're a big turnover forcing team, but when you start to go over some of these numbers, they shot it really well. But it wasn't enough because they just didn't do the little things, the hustle things that I think Houston can take out of you because of the energy that you have to extend against Houston. Go ahead and travel to Florida, Orlando, and get beat. So it's the life of the Big 12 Conference. Obviously, there's never an easy out or an easy win in this particular league, but Texas Tech overall has been good. And if I just use Houston as a comp, they've played them twice now. They've played them extremely tough, but Texas Tech at home is really where I want to go here because they beat BYU fairly soundly, 84-71. Again, that was a game that was close, and then Texas Tech broke away last 5 minutes or so. Really, they changed the game at that point, and then they beaten Houston here. So when you've beaten BYU by 13, when you've beaten Houston by 4 here, asking you to beat Kansas by 4.5 on this home floor after Kansas comes away with the win that they had the other day and now travels, and you both 6-2 inside the league. It's a big game record-wise for Big 12 seeding. The matchups are going to be the matchups, Adam. I mean, we both know they have great players. We don't have to discuss personnel at that depth anymore. But some of the things that Kansas and Texas Tech do well that could be advantages. Texas Tech shoots the 3 better than any team in the Big 12 and Big 12 play. KU doesn't defend the 3, 10th in the league defending the 3. That could be a difference maker here for Texas Tech. Kansas, not a great rebounding team. I only bring that up because Texas Tech has been so good combatively on the glass against a team like Houston. Now you get Kansas. It's almost a step down in rebounding class. So there's some things here that Texas Tech fundamentally has advantages in. Got to keep KU off the foul line. They like to get there. We'll see. I'd imagine Peterson gets his full minutes here, Adam, because for those wanting to back Kansas, say, hey, we just won at home with Darren Peterson playing half a game, and now he's going to play a full game. But I think Texas Tech's the right side here. It's a lot of situational college basketball, team off a bad loss, team off a absolutely terrific win, now has to travel. Other team gets to, atone for their loss on their home floor. I like Texas Tech here, minus the 4.5. Recent results at home have proven they can handle it. And I think the situation sets up nice for them.
Yeah, I think that 4.5 number is probably pretty like what right. I think I made it 4.9. So I'm not surprised that it's in the 4.5 range. I feel like some people might be surprised that Texas Tech coming off the loss and Kansas looking as good as they did this weekend is like a 5-point home favorite, but I think that's about where it should be, Rob. And I think I lean your way just in the respect that if Texas Tech shoots the ball well and they can sort of ride that home energy here, and then the shots start falling, they could create some separation. Now, the interesting thing to me is like, yes, Kansas has this big win over BYU, but I think it's less likely for Kansas to let down for a couple reasons. One, you go back to Peterson. Well, I just pulled it up. It was 53-33 at halftime. Like I was sitting next to a couple BYU fans. Like there's like 4 of them right in front of me. And I feel like every other Kansas fan, like these 4, and that's credit to BYU fans because they're like the best fans. They're gonna ride or die with their teams no matter what. They don't get mad at their team. Like they're just cheering them on. And I'm like watching these 4. I'm like these 4 are like the only 4 people in the building that think BYU has a chance to get back in this game. And then I'm sitting back here with a Kansas zip up on, but I've got BYU plus 4.5. So I'm like, let's go. And it was weird. It was like BYU just kind of like lulled Kansas to Kansas like pretty much felt like they had the game won. BYU started just chucking threes and hitting them. I think that's what Texas Tech might do right from the rip here. Like that's probably their path to like blowing this game open. Donovan Atwell's a guy that it came over from UNC Greensboro, who I really liked at Greensboro. That I think if they just start chucking and it's him and Watts can knock down a couple of threes, like Tech could open this game up, and then you're probably covering your 5 or whatever that number is. Something from Saturday that I felt was really good that Kansas did well was they never really let Debansta get in the flow of the game. They had him clamped early, and they were all over him. The fans were all over him. The overrated chants, and he couldn't do much one-on-one. But I just think, like going to your point, Texas Tech has more shooters. And if they just, they're going to have to make shots though, right? But they're a good 3-point shooting team. They have a couple of guys that can really cook from the perimeter. So if Texas Tech is making shots, they could blow this game open and they could create that margin. That being said, the flip side that you could look at for Kansas is like just how dominant they were when Peterson was on the floor. For that first 20 minutes where he played about 17 of them, that Kansas team looked like that they look like you could beat anyone in the country. That was as impressive of 20 minutes of basketball to do that to BYU, who I think is a very good team that I've seen in person all year, and I've been to a lot of different games. Peterson comes out in the second half. What I'm curious to know, and my gut says, Self looked at the scoreboard a couple minutes in the second half and was like, I think we're okay here. Like, I think we can hold off a 20-point lead for the final 17 minutes of the game. I think the decision was made right there. Hey, you got a big game on Monday. Hang it up. Like, just we're good. And, like I said, credit to BYU for cutting it to 4 at one point. But that was as close as it got. So, Rob, I'll throw another lean out here. I think there's points in this game because if Peterson plays the whole game, that offense is like, it's so much different than when he's not on the floor. So I think I agree with your Texas Tech lean, but I'll add another one. I'll go over in this one, Texas Tech, Kansas, because I think if the threes are falling for the Red Raiders, you're probably going to have a high scoring game.
Yeah, and where BYU is concerned, let's just get back to that for an instant, Adam. Against top quality competition this year, they've kind of shown that ability to dig a hole and get out of that hole and make it close at the end, right? You think back to the UConn game, they were in a hole, they made it close at the end. The prior game to Saturday against Arizona, we talked about the final 55 seconds in that game. They were in a huge hole, almost insurmountable. Somehow they found their way out. And then they almost find their way out against Kansas. It's almost like BYU has to learn how to be a little bit closer, throughout the game so they don't have to shovel themselves out of trouble. And to your point, I mean, on the Texas Tech side, you've got Christian Anderson, and these are guys that aren't small sample size. 165 threes he's thrown up this year, 44%, 43.6 to be exact from three-point range. Atwell, who you mentioned, Donovan Atwell, another guy, 165 threes this year, 44.2%. You've got Petty, who's put up 102 three-pointers, shooting 37%. There's so many options that, Richie Saunders had a big game Saturday. Adam, to your point about Kansas saying, hey, we're going to lock up the Bansta. And I'll just expand on what you said a little bit, that there's a lot of options to guard here, because we didn't even mention JT Toppin's name in the three-point shoot. I mean, are you going to guard the perimeter, which you don't guard well anyway, 10th in the league in guarding the three, or are you going to, if you focus on Toppin, these guys could kill you from the perimeter. So there's a lot more to worry about, I think, Texas Tech, as far as options are concerned, than BYU, where Cada is, kind of a alley-oop type guy or a lob guy on offense and not much else. While we were speaking, Adam, while you were speaking, this game went as low as 3.5. And then the 3.5s, almost every one of them got bought back to 4. So we went from 4.5 down to 3.5, back to mostly 4. There's still a couple straight 3.5s out there. But within this, 10-17, we've been talking about this game for about 9 minutes now. In that span of time, we've seen line movement both ways here. One group going KU, another group pushing back with Texas Tech again. Game did open 3.5 for what it's worth. Got to 4.5. And to the total, open 150.5, now staring at 154.5. So the money agrees with your look at the over in this game.
Yeah, had to do a thorough one there. They'll probably clip this one. So we had to give them side in total. But yeah, and it's the game of the night, and on a Monday night where there's not as many other games, got to give that one the full attention. Rob Vino, there was a point in time, although it feels like a distant memory to me and everyone in the 315 area code. Of course, I'm from the 518 area code, where there is a very large concentration of Syracuse fans as well. There was a point in time where this game on a Monday night would have been just as big of a deal. But Syracuse basketball has seen better days. You could say the same thing a little bit about North Carolina, though they're, I would say, having a fairly good season this year. Though I don't know that this is like to North Carolina standards what they would consider a great season. I think it's a good season, right? They're back they're in the top 25, so that's good. Cuse calmed the fan base down finally over the weekend with the win over Notre Dame, because folks were getting ready to riot after the losing by 20 to NC State. So Cuse gets back in the win column. Now they have to head to Chapel Hill. Was not surprised at the fact that they opened a double-digit underdog. I'm a little bit surprised that this one has moved to where it is now. So Rob Vino, does Syracuse have any chance to pull the upset at the Dean Dome tonight?
You know what's interesting to me, Adam, digging through, and I'm so glad that you have like paperwork all over when you're doing a show, because I'm that same guy. Like, I have paperwork everywhere here on this desk. But when I was going through this game this morning, it's interesting. We started this season, I don't know, a couple months ago. And in the early stages, November, December, let's talk maybe mid-December, we were talking about the height of UNC, right? And how big they are across the front line, and how they're going to be a little bit better defensively, and maybe there's more rim protection and more interior scoring, et cetera, only to get to this point in the year and find North Carolina just being North Carolina. 7-0 over the total. Their games are the last 7 games. 6-1 over the total is their team total last 7 games. They haven't scored less than 78 points in any ACC game so far this year. They've played 9. UNC is the same, although differently built. They're the same dynamic offense. I won't say they're the same, vulnerable defense, but they're still not a great defense considering all of that height. Have to approach UNC very, very different nowadays. That's why this total went from 152.5 all the way to 156.5, because how else are you going to play North Carolina games anymore? You got to look at total first if you're over first if you're looking at total. The Syracuse side, I'm going to say a couple of things here and have you explain them to me. We've talked about William Kyle a bunch, rim defender, et cetera, et cetera. It's true. They're fourth in the ACC in blocks or block percentage in ACC play. But man, they don't defend real well. Effective field goal percentage 11th from 2-point range inside the arc. They're 12th in the conference, which is kind of surprising because we constantly say here on the show that they should provide pretty good rim defense. The block shots are one thing, but you still got to stop the other side from scoring, whether it's mid-range or what it is. They just haven't been that good. Saturday, they go out against Notre Dame. They shoot lights out. A couple of numbers here. Syracuse has played 22 games. It's only the 7th time this season out of 22 where they shot 50% or better. It's the second highest field goal percentage they've shot all season. They were really, really good. And when you go down the box from Saturday and you start seeing, who did the scoring here, you say to yourself, man, these guys are pretty good. How come they're not better? Donnie Freeman basically didn't even contribute in that game. And we spent a lot of time talking about when Donnie Freeman gets back into the lineup, et cetera. So for Syracuse, a bit of an enigma on the defensive end. How much can they put up on the offensive end here to get this thing over the way everybody thinks it's going to go? They're going to have to score a little bit. Maybe North Carolina allows them to score a little bit because, like I say, they're 7-0. Their games are 7-0 to the over. Last 7. UNC is shooting the 3 really well this year. I don't know, Adam. I've come full circle now on North Carolina, and all those thoughts I had about them being a better defensive team and maybe a more methodical team are all out the window at this point. They score, they run, they give up points. They're an over team. So maybe I look that direction. I just want to give a quick check to the Syracuse team total because that thought crossed my mind here. 72.5. I'll dig into it a little further during the day, but for Syracuse to get to 73 might be a consideration here because, again, UNC has been not the greatest on the defensive end this year.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be interested to see what Coach Autry does with his starting lineup. Like over the weekend, he decided to bring Donnie Freeman off the bench. You have to wonder, Rob, if that has anything to do with the fact that their better defensive performances were when he was out with an injury. So if you go back to the players tournament, back, the Vegas MTE, that was like Thanksgiving, feast week time period. One of their best defensive efforts of the game or of the season was that game against Houston that they probably should have won, which, would have been a tremendous win for a team like Syracuse. And then the next day against Kansas, for the majority of that game, they were pretty good defensively. And then the game I went to where they played Tennessee, they were tremendous defensively, probably their best defensive effort of the season in that game against the Vols, where they get the outright win as an 8-point dog in like a 60. I think both teams barely broke 60. So, and I left that game thinking, man, like this isn't, William Kyle's blocking everything. The defense is really intense. It's all man to man. And they're just locking up their opponent. And then Freeman comes back. The defense hasn't been as good. I don't know that he's the issue, but I think Syracuse has a lot of other issues in addition to like maybe, having regressed defensively. Now, over the weekend, do we think that was like some great defensive performance? No, I think they were just playing Notre Dame, who's been without their best player, right? Like I don't think that was just some like crazy defensive performance. It was a good effort by Cuse. They put up 86 points. They never really had, there was never really a doubt for them in that game. But I don't think like that having Donnie Freeman come off the bench is some genius idea that Red Autry just concocted here, right? So it'll be interesting to see what way they go. Does he bring him off the bench again and try to go like ultra defensive to start this game? Maybe to just, throw UNC out of their rhythm. But the problem with that, Rob, is how does Syracuse hang around with North Carolina if Freeman doesn't give them 20 or 25 points, right? You can't have a 7-point game from Freeman like you had over the weekend and expect to be anywhere near UNC in this game. So that makes it very challenging. I will wrap it up with this. just watching this team over the years, Syracuse, and in recent years when they've had bad teams, or what I consider to be teams like bad Cuse teams, this is the game. This is the type of the game like they tend to show up in this game on the road. No one really giving them a chance. Double-digit underdog. There was one a couple years back. I feel like at UNC, they maybe didn't. They played really good for a long stretch, and maybe they think they might have covered right at the end. But to me, I think you have to go back like 2 years for that one. It was a road game, Cuse at UNC. It was a Saturday afternoon. Point is, I wouldn't be surprised if they gave an effort here. That was a big win over Notre Dame to just quiet the fan base. I don't know that they have people back on the side of Autry, or that the fans are still not furious, but it was a good win and something to build off of. If Syracuse can defend at high level here, which they have it in them because they've done it against Houston, against Kansas, against Tennessee. If they can do that, I think they can cover 12.5, which is where this is steamed to at this point. I don't know if this is going to make my card, Rob, but I do think that Cuse might be able to hang around in this game. I don't know if they can win, but I wouldn't be that surprised if this was more competitive than people think. All right, I got to go to Garth here. Sorry, Garth. That was a premeditated transition to Cuse UNC. So I'll get you in here. Garth donated. He says, we haven't talked much Big Sky ball this season. Yeah, that is true. I think, you know why, Garth? You know why that is? It's not a slight toward the Big Sky. I think it's because they always play a league slate on Saturday. And on Saturday, they're pretty much never going to come up in conversation unless you're really noisy in the chat. I don't know that Kelly Stewart really respects the Big Sky Conference. That's just what my gut says here. But yeah, so let's get some Big Sky talking, because Rob, but going into the season when we had the idea of how do we handle all these teams, maybe we'll split the leagues up a little bit. You were kind of like, well, I like, I stay up and I bet some totals in this conference quite a bit. The game Garth wants to talk about specifically is Portland State, who was sort of running roughshod through this league. And then they finally had the game that was kind of like, they were always going to be due a little bit of regression. And it came in the Montana game. Over the weekend, I believe they caught Montana State without their best player. So maybe a little bit more regression for them, but they still won the game because Montana State, I think, only put up 54 points. Do you see kind of Portland State getting back to what they were, prior to the Montana teams? Because I don't think they played their best ball against Montana and Montana State the last 2 times out.
And it was still close, and they still did what their trademark has been. It's very, very interesting to see Portland State evolve into this dominant of a defensive team inside league play. Adam, Portland State is one of those teams over the course of the last couple decades where they're just up and down the floor and scoring points. Most of my success with this particular team last 20 years has been playing to the over. But you're not playing to the over and having a lot of success with Portland State this year. It's where the biggest discrepancy in this game lies, because Idaho State is not a good defensive team. Idaho State's going to have to score in order to beat them. First time around, this game went 93-87. It was 78-78 after regulation. So you had 156 points in regulation. The game was played at Idaho State, but it's one of the few games where Portland State gave up what I would call an excessive amount of points when you look at what they've given up to the rest of the league. So it could be a matchup thing, but you are turning around and going on the road here to Portland State. It's hard to lay a batch of points with this team simply because they don't score enough to get full separation. You're asked to lay 6.5 here. It's not an incredibly large amount. They did win by that margin, as you mentioned, against Montana State the other day without their best player. But I do wonder, the dilemma becomes, is Idaho State just a good offensive matchup against this defense, or was that just a one-off way back towards the beginning of Big Sky season where Portland State is settled in now and just not giving up anything to the good teams, to the good offensive teams in the league? So for me, I think I would probably start by looking under. As far as this conference is concerned, Idaho State is a team I've looked at a little bit toward overs, but mostly when we're looking at this league, we're looking at like Sacramento State, who we've talked about quite a bit. They've had this tendency to go over. We're looking at Eastern Washington, we talked about earlier in the year, Northern Colorado, et cetera, a lot of over teams, because that's generally what I like to play. But if I were going to start here, I think maybe you have to look over. Portland State probably doesn't give up 78 to this team again today. So for Garth, I would say if the number is low by modern day standards, 137.5, 138, and sometimes it's difficult to keep these games under. So with the first result, I somewhat shy away, but I do think Portland State is 7 points better than Idaho State at this point in time. Portland State just does every single thing well on the defensive end, and nobody's been able to rattle them for about 8 straight games now. So that would probably be my best look. Portland State here, who has a chance. Honestly, I don't think they will, because I think Montana's better. But they do have a chance to win this league this year. They're one of the top contenders when Big Sky tournament time comes around.
Yeah, you pointed out the first meeting. There was 24 extra points in that meeting because it went into overtime. So the interesting things for me, like about the first meeting, right? Idaho State, I believe, was up big in the second half at one point. Took a kind of a big comeback by Portland State to force OT, and then they go and win by 6 in overtime. So that's certainly encouraging if you like the Idaho State side, is the fact that like that first game, I mean, you could make a pretty strong case that Idaho State should have won. Now, what's not to like about the Idaho State side you brought up is the travel you'll get in this league sometimes. Every once in a while, you get hit with the double road trip, right? Where you're going Thursday, Saturday back to back, and then you come back and you have to do Thursday, Saturday back to back again the following weekend. That's tough in this league because this league covers some ground, right? Like, I mean, it's not so much the mileage traveled, but these are not, Pocatello, Idaho, like, right? Like Orem, Utah, or wherever. I don't know if it's Orem. It's the other one, where Weber State is located. The point is, Flagstaff, Arizona. Flagstaff, Arizona, where I was last year, for a Northern Arizona game, all the way out to Sacramento, California. Like, these are not Greeley, Greeley, Colorado. These are tough places to get to. So having to play a 4th straight road game, which is what Idaho State is being asked to do here, is not I mean, this would be the probably the toughest spot for them on this sort of swing of their schedule, right? Last week, they go to the Montanas. That's a tough trip, having to go to Bozeman and then to Montana on Saturday. This week, they go down to Utah to play Weber. Now they got to go to Portland State. That's a Saturday, Monday. So they did give them the week in between the trips, but still, that's a tough trip, Saturday, and then having to hang out Monday for this game, 4 straight road games. So that's tough for Idaho State, but I still think Portland State might be a tad just like inflated on the number, right? They had such a hot start to league play. I'm kicking myself for not playing the Montana game because it made like so much sense to fade Portland State in that spot. And then over the weekend, they benefit by Montana State not having one of their top players. I think if Montana State's at full strength right there, maybe Portland State struggles again in that game. And then on top of that, they weren't like overly impressive in that win. So I want to like the points here with Idaho State, but I don't know if I can get there with the fact that they're going to be playing their 4th straight road game. It's the back end of like a road back-to-back. And like you said, Rob, if the Portland State defense, which has been so good, can clamp down, they might be able to create some distance on their home floor in this game. So it's a tough one. I maybe lean under just because I think that first game got out of control and then had 5 extra minutes and 24 extra points tacked on to the score. So maybe an underlean for me there. Okay. Real quick promo. Double the firepower CBB package. Myself and Rob, we had a really good weekend. Rob promoted at the top. That's up on our page. I'm sure we'll each have something for tonight. It's a light slate, but there's a lot of good games. And we're going to keep rolling right through. We have a big time back and forth going on in the chat about this next game. I'm gonna do it again. I don't even know why I'm gonna try to say it, but it's not Jadojus Bayou. Spell it out for me phonetically in the chat, please. I know you can do that. It's Nacogdoches, Texas. The point is, McNeese State is going to hit the road, Rob. And if you remember, we talked about McNeese's very first conference road game in detail on this show. And in that game, I gave out incarnate word. And before that game, I said, I am going to make a conscious effort to fade McNeese on the road in conference play when they play the better teams in this league. Okay. And I want to update what has happened since that game. So we hit outright with incarnate word in that first game, right? They were like an 11-point underdog, something like that, and they won the game outright. We then cashed against the spread the next time it came up with Houston Baptist or Houston Christian, whatever the hell they call the school now, right? I think this app might still have the wrong name. But anyway, that one covers. And if you remember that game, they had McNeese on the ropes as well. McNeese didn't really create that. That 10-point final was only created right at the end. I mean, Houston Christian was never really, never really worried about covering that game. McNeese then had 4 straight home games. So the spot didn't come up again until mid-January. And I kind of said, you know what? I'm going to throw these two out because for me, I couldn't really tell if Rio Grande Valley and Texas A&M Corpus Christi were in the top half of the league. I was like, these two could go either way. So I'm going to toss these out. And it was probably, I saved myself juice, Rob, because UT Rio Grande Valley actually beat McNeese. And then McNeese blew out A&M Corpus Christi. I threw the Louisiana and Lamar trip. I kind of was like, I have those teams toward the bottom of the league here a little bit, but they actually both covered the number. So had I expanded it to just fading McNeese on the road in league play, the record would be, what did I just like 5-1 right now? Because McNeese went on the road, didn't cover against Southeast Louisiana, and then they only beat Lamar by 1. And they were a 10.5-point road favorite in that game. Now, that's a long-winded intro to get to this game, but I wanted to illustrate the point where after hearing me talk that out, you think, oh, Trig, Stephen F. Austin's a no-brainer tonight, right? Because they're arguably the best team in this league. They're at home. They're coming in 19-3. They're awesome. But Rob, this is what happens in sports betting, right? Suddenly, we're not getting McNeese with like an 8-point cushion, a 10-point cushion, a 12-point cushion. Now we need Stephen F. Austin pretty much to win this game. And that's where I might have to back out of this strategy. So I see you, Bayou. I know he loves Stephen F. Austin tonight. And I see like the pro Stephen F. Austin sentiment here. But I don't know if I can get around the fact that a few weeks ago, I might have been getting 6 in this game. I might have been getting 6.5. Maybe between 5 and 6. And now suddenly I basically need Stephen F. Austin to win this game to cash. That's where I might have to back out. So even though I see the merit of like, this is a really good team at home, McNeese has struggled a ton on the road against the spread in conference play. I don't know if I can get there with that number. So I don't know. Talk to me about this game and help me make sense of this one.
Well, let's go back to the first meeting. They played already. Like you say, that game was in McNeese, 66-64 McNeese. Stephen F. Austin hangs in there the whole way. And here's for Bayou, and maybe he could help here. To me, the head-scratching part of this particular line movement in this game was the fact that the total went up. There's not one single thing inside conference play, the Southland, that Stephen F. Austin doesn't do better than just about everybody in this league. The numbers of, the number one appears next to their name in multiple categories defensively here. Where McNeese, block shot team, probably covers up some form of defensive weakness. at times, but I would say that I'm on board with Stephen F. Austin here. I mean, it's just been an incredible run for them. Back when we were talking about McNeese, Adam, I think BP was even still on the show. And we were trying to figure out who's going to be any good in this league aside from McNeese. And I don't know that at that time we actually put Stephen F. Austin on the pedestal that they should be put on now. To go to McNeese, to come within 2, they got beat up on the free throw line in that game. And when I say beat up, it's just because they had twice as many free throw attempts against them. 13 for McNeese, only 7 free throws for Stephen F. Austin. And what's interesting in that game is McNeese is the best free throw shooting team in the league. And they only made 8 of 13 in that game. So they probably could have won by a couple extra in that contest. McNeese, which is really good at turning people over, turned Stephen F. Austin over 15 times as opposed to 7. They're going to have to overcome those deficiencies here, but the home floor makes up for a lot. McNeese, do you treat the Saturday game against Lamar, where they snuck by 64-63, as a look ahead to this showdown? Or do you treat it as, somebody's going to catch them outright here again? And whichever way you look at it, 2020 hindsight is always the best way to find things out. But I think Stephen F. Austin is the side here at home, taking a 1.5. And one more time, I'll just say what I'm really confused about here is why this total goes up to 142.5 when McNeese State defensive average time of possession defensively is the slowest in the country. In other words, you come down and you try to set up offense against McNeese, that shot clock's going to run because you're not getting an immediate shot. You're getting the slowest possession time in the country. And with Stephen F. Austin, you're getting the 335th slowest. So both lockdown half-court defenses. Neither side really pushes pace. You get caught in one of these grinders like 66, 64 that we saw earlier. What could hurt you is overtime if you're playing under. But I don't know that you can walk to the window and say, man, I'm so scared of overtime, I can't bet this game. 142.5 seems awfully high to me. So in this contest, I think I would play under, and I'd look to Stephen F. Austin to avenge what happened earlier. I think at this point in time, they probably can. And real quick, Adam, the one thing that you said earlier triggered a thought. You said that McNeese State is now in a price range where all we're asking them to do is win the game. And we just saw this Friday. We talked about it with Michigan State. Michigan, they have to lay double digits every night. They can't cover. They're 0-7 against the spread. But then when only asked to lay 1.5 and win a game, guess what happened? They won the game pretty convincingly on the road in a venue that's going to be tougher than what Stephen F. Austin is going to present. I venture to say Breslin Center is a tougher place to play. As tough as it might be to play in Stephen F. Austin, not the same.
Yeah, listen, I think it'll be a phenomenal crowd tonight. It's gonna be a great atmosphere. Rob, I'm with you. I like the under here. I don't really want to have to pick between McNeese being in a good value spot and showing up here, and Stephen F. Austin and the crazy home crowd with the great home record. I don't really want to pick between those two things, but the under makes so much sense. We saw the first meeting; it was cagey. McNeese did as good of a job on Keon Thompson as anyone has done this year, really. And if you look at Stephen F. Austin's games, I mean, Keon Thompson is, he is the offense for this team. He's what makes the offense go. The last few games, 15 points, 27, 26, 20, 15, 15, 16. The last time he didn't score double digits in the game, McNeese State, 8 points, 3 of 10 shooting. They had him locked up all night in that game. And so if they could do that good of a job on him here, which I don't see why they wouldn't be able to at least sort of roll out a similar game plan, make someone else beat them. I don't really want any part of Stephen F. Austin, especially now, 1.5. I think that you'd be taking a bad number. I think you'd be taking a bad number there. I do lean toward the under. That's what I think. Under is probably the way I would look there. Rob, I think I gave out the under in the first meeting when those two teams played, and it went under by a mile. So I'll just call for a similar game. Someone says, Trigger, who did your makeup this morning? That's probably the lighting here. I am in I've got these like little lights. I wonder if I have the setting wrong. Do you want me more tan? Are you looking for the tan setting? Should we go with the hybrid? I don't know. I think it's probably the lighting here. If I look a little flush, it's because I haven't slept much. If you haven't been following along, I've been just driving around the Midwest, and now I'm trying to make my way back home. So but yeah, we ran it back with the white gummy bear rain after a 3-0 day yesterday. Had to come back with the same energy drink. So BA Bet says, do you ever sleep? We'll sleep in May, right? Like what Rothstein says. It's we're in conference play right now. Sleep can wait. We'll sleep when the season is over. Bayou says the Bang energy is going to hit the skin. Yeah, I don't know. I've worked my way through most of this can. It hasn't really hit in yet. So Purple Haze Bang. I don't know. I'm not a big grape guy. So BA Bets. I'll tell you what. Once I'm going to ride the white gummy bear out as long as this win streak will allow. But once I have to switch it up, I'll try the Purple Haze Bang. Yeah, someone's like, to my kidneys. Yeah, listen, I don't drink, so like I'm hoping that the damage, like some people do damage to their body with alcohol. Maybe I'm getting a little bit back there. So whatever. Hopefully the energy drinks won't kill me, but we'll see. That Cam says that energy drink is not from the Buc-ee's Concourse Walk. It's from down the street. But that was Rob, have you been to a Buc-ee's? Have you been to Buc-ee's yet?
I've never been in a Buc-ee's. It's always been Wawa's or Sheetz.
Rob, this Buc-ee's puts Wawa and Sheetz in a body bag instantly. It's one of the most incredible places I've ever seen. Yeah, unbelievable. All right, back to the games tonight. Rob, we got about 13 minutes left. We're going 2-teamer today. Do you have any idea where you want to go with the parlay?
Yeah, I'm going to roll this way, Adam. When I came on the show, my every intention was to go ahead and play Bethune Cookman, Alabama A&M over the total of 142.5. But we talked about the game already, and the more I keep doing a little investigation here, the one thing that's somewhat of concern, and I got ripped in the comments section one day for talking about travel situations. Somebody was coming at me for, it's only an inch of ice and everybody's going to the game. And I think when we talk about travel, we're not talking about.
I defended you there, Rob. They were trying to say that like the ice, you were like, oh, the ice isn't going to matter. They're like, you don't know what an inch of ice does. And I said, my sister went to Duke. You would have to have, the world would have to be ending for that building to not be completely packed for a Duke game. So I had your back there, Rob. Sorry to interrupt.
And even further, I think when I talk about it in that context, it's always about, does the team have difficulty flight-wise, et cetera, getting to the venue, not the fans, and how, we put chains on our tires. I mean, I grew up, I know what it is. Syracuse travel to Chapel Hill tonight probably got a little bit dicey along the way. I mean, I've read a couple of reports, but everything seems to be A-okay. And the more I think this game through, the more I think this underdog side, Syracuse, getting above their team total tonight is the right way to go. It's priced so low, 72.5. Every team except one has gotten to 73 against UNC in league play. And so why not Syracuse? They've certainly got enough scoring. I don't expect to have the same shooting performance that they had against Notre Dame on Saturday, obviously. But I do think there's just too many components on that Syracuse team. And they could get blown out here, Adam. This final could be 95-74. And I could care less if they get over 72.5 points here. I just think that's the magic number. Like I say, UNC has been allowing it because they've just been scoring and either winning by wide margin or winning high-scoring close games or losing high-scoring close games. And the other thing I'll add to it is that I know it's 6 days away, but Duke is on deck for UNC. And the UNC-Duke look-ahead is always a factor no matter what. So for me, I'm not going to worry about whether or not Syracuse can contend within 11 and a half points, but I do think they can get to 73 here. So that'll be my leg of the parlay. Syracuse team total over 72 and a half.
Yeah, I co-sign that. I think Cuse is going to hang around. And I think if you like Cuse, that you're probably going to need that many to cover anyway. So I'm with you there. I am going to go. Well, in the meantime, before we move on, did you have something to say about Bethune Cookman, or were you not going to go to that game because I kind of cut you off there?
Well, yeah, and real quick, it still could make the card. I'm going to dig just a little bit deeper, but Reggie Theus's team is certainly they're the class of the league right now, especially on the defensive end, which wouldn't correlate to playing a game over. However, Alabama A&M has been such a good, efficient offensive team, and on their home floor, you always expect a little more out of them. I think they can give them half a go here. I don't know that they'll stick within the number. It's been bet really heavily toward the Bethune-Cookman side so far this morning. I think we saw a rise from 1.5 to maybe 4, and rightfully so because Bethune-Cookman has been that good. Last Monday, I went with their team total over, got there with ease. I think they can score on anybody in this league. So if I start with that, if I start with, say, 78 out of Bethune-Cookman, can I get the rest? Can I get, 65 out of the other side? I don't know why you can't with Alabama A&M. As good as Cookman's numbers are defensively inside this league and everything they did in the non-con, prep them like it does so often for Southland and SWAC teams for this, which I should put MEAC in there as well. The teams that play the really, really tough paydays to get ready for conference season. I think Alabama A&M having the home floor here and being as good as they've been efficiency-wise on their home floor is good enough to probably find their way to 68, 69. When I put it into proper context like that, mathematically, it just seems like an over game to me. So still may make the card, Adam. I'm going to check into a couple other things, but that was a consideration of mine for those in the chat that, like to take. Sometimes I drop more than one thought here when it comes to parlay time. If you're taking note of them, that was one that I had here today.
Yeah, you've very much nailed the Bethune Cookman thing. If you go back to earlier in the year, I said, man, like they definitely have probably the best players, but I felt like the top half of that SWAC was very strong, very like evenly matched. And I remember you kind of saying like, nah, this Bethune Cookman team's like marginally better from a talent standpoint. And it's been like completely correct. They've stood out. They're 7-1 in league play, and with Doc Bradley back, I don't even know that the books have fully like adjusted to like how good this team is with him back. Because it's like, I mean, something like that kind of gets lost in the shuffle. That's not a huge name. He just came from another SWAC team last year, but yeah, 7-1 in league play. It almost looks, when I watch Cookman, it almost looks like they can name their score in a lot of these games. Yeah. And it's like, the one game we were both on where you ended up getting your team total, but I failed to cover by like a point or two. They kind of went to sleep. Like he put some of the backups in.
Oh, that's right.
It was the Alcorn State game. So like they only won that game by 11, but they were so much more dominant than that. And then, last time out though, against like an Alabama State, you could see that they wanted to make a point, right? That was because Alabama State won this league last year. So that was a game where you could see like, Cookman really wanted to make a point, and they go out and win the game on the road and win it easily. I just, there's no way I would bet against them at this point in this league. Like unless it was like you were getting a great number to do so, they're a lot better than the rest of these teams. So anything pro Cookman, I think I can get down with here. All right, Rob, I think I know where I'm going to go here.
All right.
We got national TV tonight for the Patriot League. And, for a league that's in my backyard, I got to be honest, I have not done much with this league this year. I'm usually very, very involved in the Patriot League. This is a league I typically bet a ton. I haven't bet it much this year because I think all of these teams are awful. Like I think this is like I think the Patriot League is as bad as it's been. Like as bad, like from a talent perspective, and the fact that a lot of these teams just aren't very good basketball teams. That's why I haven't been involved with the Patriot League much. Now, Navy is having a really nice year. They're 9-1, but the books have known this about Navy since the beginning of the season. There really hasn't been you haven't really gotten much value trying to bet on Navy. The problem is I haven't felt like I wanted to bet against them. And it's like, you know what I mean? It's been hard for me to find good spots to get involved in this league. That being said, I think we have a situation here where I am willing to buy low on a team that I thought was going to be the team pressing Navy at the top of this league this year, and that's Boston University. If you go back to the beginning of the season, we did a show, and I said the Patriot League is a 3-horse race this year. It's going to be Navy, it's going to be Colgate, it's going to be Boston U. The rest of these teams are awful. I've nailed 2 of the 3 components. This league is Navy and it's Colgate. No one else is close to them right now. Navy 9-1, Colgate 7-3. Yes, there's some parity, and some of these other teams are in the middle. Like Lehigh got a nice win over Colgate over the weekend. But I'm telling you right now, those 2, it's Navy, it's Colgate, it's everyone else. The reason Boston U is not in that group is they kind of have been decimated by injury this year. They just haven't had the roster and the group of guys that they thought they were going to have, which is when I had them in the top 3, Ben Roy was playing a part in this team. Landrum, I think, is the other guy. The name is escaping me. Chiron Alexander. These were all guys that were supposed to be like playing big parts for this team this year and really haven't played all season. But now, as we talk about injuries, right? Like at some point, you know, those guys, you have to just forget about them. And with BU right now, they're 3-7. They're never going to be the team they were supposed to be pre all these injuries happening. But I still think they're better than being the worst team in the league. And that's what this matchup is essentially about right here. It's the 2 worst teams in the league, Boston University, Holy Cross. Both of these teams at 3-7. They're tied for last place in the league. All I'm saying, Rob, is I still think Boston University is like at least a middle of the pack team with all the injuries in this league. They've had some tough luck losses, overtime over the weekend at Bucknell. They had a game against American they let slip away earlier this year. So I am going to buy low going forward on Boston University. I felt like they could have and should have won over the weekend. They didn't. Now they have an easier matchup. It's a road game, but it's only Holy Cross. It's right down the street. And this moved a little bit, so I'm just going to go Boston University money line here. I still think they're better, and I think this could be the turning point that at least gets them like back middle of the pack by the end of conference play. So I'll go with the Terriers here on the money line.
Yeah, I had luck with them a couple of weeks ago with a team total that got to overtime against Lafayette, and they won 77-73. So go BU.
That's right. That is the some great. My sister went to undergrad at BU, and then she went to Duke, and she was an athlete at Boston University. So she knew some of the players, and that was, man, those BU teams when she was there was Pat Chambers as the head coach, and was it John Holland? Like one of the better players they've ever had at the school. They went to the NCAA tournament, lost a game to Kansas. I believe they were a 16 seed, but yeah, BU, I don't really think they've really been back since. And it's too bad because this was a team. I thought this was the year BU gets back in the NCAA tournament, and the injuries have just straight up let them down. But like I said, I think this is the time you buy this team. The pendulum has swung way too far. They're not the worst team in the league. I can't see them being at the bottom of these standings. So Boston University, we'll call it -150. That number, that -1 was gone pretty quick. So Boston University -150 will be my leg of the parlay. And then Rob Bino's going with the Syracuse team total over 72.5. Little two-teamer for you on Monday. Let's see if we can, run these up this week and get back in the plus for the parlay of the day. For anything Rob and I play, that's going to be available on WagerTalk.com on the Firepower CBB package. All of my plays, all of Rob's plays. If you grabbed it over the weekend, you probably did pretty good because I think we both had a pretty solid weekend. I will be back home by the time we do this show tomorrow morning. So kind of looking forward to that, even though the hotel backdrop was better to me today than it was on Saturday when I had the bed in the background. So yeah, we'll be back. Enjoy the hoops tonight. Let's cash some tickets, and we will see you guys tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern.